Welcome to WHAQ, a talk show centered around the beauty of queerness and the challenges it brings, with hosts a pansexual princess, get Lizzie with it, she, her, and the sapphic sensation, games mistress, she, her. That's GAYMES, mistress.
Today we're going to talk about our immigration experience and up to now, and some of the things that impact the immigration process for queer people. So we're sort of starting a new format of the show a little bit, where one of us kind of drives the episode and the other person has discussion points that they contribute. The exception to that is that Liz has a bit at the end, but this is a primarily Gemma episode, just to try to better articulate who's in charge of researching what for our episodes. So trying that out today. And so just sort of a bit of an overview. We're going to talk a little bit about our experience thus far, and then we're going to talk about some of the stories of queer couples that we've encountered in our journey, and a selective history of same-sex partner immigration. And just for a note, that with the exception of the end of this episode, which is where we'll talk about Rainbow Railroad a little bit, and Liz will do that, we're talking about family class immigration. And so I'll explain what that is as part of us talking about our experience. So as everyone knows, I'm immigrating to the UK to be with Liz. I am immigrating on, so there's different classes of immigration. There's different, you can't just simply decide you want to move somewhere and apply to just live there.
Contrary to what my entire family thought. When I tried to explain, they were like, oh, just thought, she gets to live here. No. Sorry.
Yeah, you can't just pick up and live in another country if you don't have a right to live in that country. So it's possible, if you've got joint citizenship or something like that, then for sure. But unless you have citizenship to a country, generally you can't just move there. You need to go there for a reason, and there's different classes for that. So one would be going for school. For instance, there's a whole tier of visas for that. Another one is work class, so skilled worker, and that is usually done when a company inside that country basically takes on sponsoring you to work there, or you could be sent to work by the business that you work at in your home country to go work somewhere else, but that's worker class visa. There's also different ancestry things or rite of passage that way. So for instance, there is an ancestry class within Britain where if your family has immigrated in the recent history, you can have access back to the UK. And there's refugee status, which is if you live somewhere where it's dangerous for you for whatever reason, there's different classifications of that. You may be able to get status in another country where it's safer. And most of the global north country do have refugee programs, where there's a certain quota of folks that they take in every year because where they're living right now is dangerous for them for one or more reasons. And Liz will talk a little bit about that in her bit about Rainbow Railroad, because that's the class they do. So the way it's working is that Liz is my sponsor for my visa. I am going over in a family class immigration. And so what that is, contrary to all the other ones I talked about, is when you have a family member who is living in another country, regardless of whether they're a citizen there or not, sometimes, if they're there legally, they can bring over family members. That can include, in different countries, different relationships. It almost always includes partners. That's where we're going to talk about some of the same-sex stuff. It can include children, depending on the children's relationship to other parents. It can include parents and grandparents as well in different countries. In Canada, it does. In the UK, that's not really a thing. It's much more challenging. And there can be other family class stuff depending on situations. So, but it can be challenging. And yes, yeah, exactly, Amanda. It's a process in family class is such a process. And for the UK, the family class immigration includes partners or prospective partners, and I'll explain what that means, prospective, proposed partners, and children. That's family class immigration. It is really challenging to bring over, there are people who have legal guardianship of siblings that can't bring them over and things like that, despite the fact that they're legally in these countries.
That's so wild.
So what we're doing is we're doing a fiancé visa, which is a segment of a family class visa. And we have to prove three major things with sort of like, it's like three and a little. First, and this is true of all, we're talking UK right now, and this is the process we've gone through. You have to pass a financial requirement. This means that Liz needs to make a certain amount of money per year and be employed making that money. If she is self-employed, she needs to make a certain amount of money per year for 24 months before the application is submitted.
Yep.
We're lucky that we didn't have to go and find a job that met the financial qualifications. She met the financial qualifications with her current job, which was nice. But even if you meet the financial qualifications, if you don't have an employer that is willing to sort of do some of the letter writing and stuff, and even though technically they have to, that power dynamic is hard. And if you work somewhere, I don't want to name a company because I don't actually I can name one. I can name one that won't do it. IKEA. You can work for IKEA in the UK and make enough money. They will not write you a letter confirming that you make above a certain amount of money. They say, you got your pay slips. That's that. We're not going to say anything. So there's one that will do it. Or won't do it for sure. And I'm fine dropping that name because I know for a fact that is accurate in the UK. But there's other companies like that. So like Liz, like we're lucky. We've, both got Liz has a decent relationship with her boss. He knows me. It's okay that way. So that's
a reason I took you to the Christmas party.
So there's the first qualification. The second is around accommodations. And accommodations mean that they need to have somewhere for the sponsoring partner needs to have somewhere that you can live. And it's not going to violate the Housing Overcrowding Act, and the person can legally live there. So it means there's different stipulations like with council housing and things like that. And so you need your landlord, and this is something you can't get around. You need your landlord to write a letter saying that the person can live there. If you have a landlord that refuses to do this, that can be really challenging. We were lucky in that Liz's landlord was willing to do so. If you own your home, you not only have to provide that paperwork, but you actually have to have a housing inspection done, pay to have a housing inspection done to say that the home is suitable for another person. If you happen to be sponsoring your partner and their 2 kids or something, the inspection has to say that as well, enough for the amount of people on that application. And that's if you, Amanda. And that's if you own it. If you own it, it doesn't matter. You can show title deeds, you can show mortgages, you can show all of that. You will be refused if you do not have your £300 housing inspection done and submitted by one of their qualified, there's a list of people that you can do it through, that they're pre-checked or whatever by Home Office. I don't really, they're pre-vetted basically, so you need to use one of those. If you're living with family and they own the house or something like that, not only do you need a letter from them saying let's say Liz and I were going to live with her parents. And in this hypothetical situation, Liz's parents own their home outright, Well, not only do we submit all of the same stuff, we then also need a letter from Liz's parents saying we can live there and pass their passports. We need to get copies of their passports to prove that they are legally in the country. As part of that. So that's the accommodations piece. So that's the first, those are the first 2. Then there's 1.5 other pieces. And I say 1.5, I'll explain that in a minute. One is genuine and subsisting relationship, which means you have to prove that you're in a real relationship. And the half is that for a fiancé visa, we need to prove that we actually intend to get married. So we had to submit a whole bunch of paperwork proving that we intend to get married. What does a genuine and subsisting relationship look like? Well, this is where it's challenging for queer folks. Our relationships look different. And we full on knew that we had to prove that we weren't just friends.
We're just gal pals.
And I have heard stories firsthand of people who are queer who have had Home Office ask them to verify that their same-sex partner is not just a friend. And this is in situations, there's like a few different situations. One is ours where we like intend to get married. So we need to prove that we are entering into not a sham marriage, that it's legal, that it's based in, here's the thing, it's based in love, but like, obviously ours is, like, I don't have an issue, like, Liz and I in many ways have like a traditional relationship in that we are romantically involved, sexually involved, emotionally involved, like, but there's lots of people that, especially queer folks, whose relationships don't look like that, who also deserve to have nesting partners that they can be with.
Yeah, just because it's not society's norm doesn't mean it's not their norm. But yeah, it's wild. Like, what are you supposed to do? Send like a sex tape? Like, to prove that you're not just friends? And yeah, I was just going to say, so Tom in chat, and apologies, the chat box on screen isn't working, so sorry if you happen to be watching this on YouTube or whatever. I was trying to scroll around and fix that. But Tom in chat just said, did you send them the Twitch clip? So if you don't know, Gemma proposed to me live on stream with 100 viewers. So hopefully 100 people to verify that our relationship is genuine with video evidence that it happened. So yes, we did. We sent it in.
We sent a screen cap with chat full of people being very genuinely happy for us. We sent a link to the VOD, and we sent details around the proposal, and we also sent screen caps of our social media after we got engaged. But we also sent, so like, I'll actually talk about what we sent in just a minute, because I want to say, like, we're lucky that we have like a genuine relationship by traditional standards. Lots of people don't, and I firmly believe that they deserve the right to cohabitate as well. And part of it is
Absolutely.
that you have to prove that you're in like a very particular type of relationship. And like one of the stipulations, in case you're curious about this, my visa will be canceled if Home Office believes that Liz and I aren't living together. This isn't just about like, oh, you're like, she can still, like, in this situation, this hypothetical situation, when I immigrate for this entire time, I don't have access to public benefits, and I have to pay my NHS fee outright. So part of my application is multiple thousands of pounds of NHS fees that I pay outright. I then also don't have access to any public benefits, whether that be anything from housing allowances, caring allowances, any kind of tax breaks, any kind of like government assistance, no access to that. Even if that was the case and we were following all of that, and Liz and I decided we were the type of partners who didn't want to live in the same home, my visa would be canceled and I would have 28 days to leave the country. So like it's what they believe a relationship to be is very strict around what that looks like. If they believe at any point that we are not romantically linked, we will have to show evidence that we are genuine partners. I'm not sure what that means, but Liz and I have joked about sending sex tapes because, like, I don't know what that means. Like,
it's wild.
And I love you.
Like, is it compet? Like, what's a genuine relationship? Do we need to send videos of me taking the bins out and dealing with power tools in a shed and videos of you washing dishes? Like, what does that mean? Like, does one of us have to be a husband, one of us have to be a wife to prove that?
Yep.
It's wild. So,
And go ahead.
No, I was just going to answer Flinksy's question.
Yeah, so Flinksy, your question, yes, I do buy in. In fact, I pay thousands of pounds every cycle, and we've got to go through 3 cycles of this. This is only the first one. There will be 3 more once I get there, actually. But the last one is the last one, and it's called indefinite leave to remain. And each time we pay literal, like we've already squirreled away. We've been working so hard, money for my next payment. Because the next payment will be another £3,000, and it will happen somewhere around July. We've already paid thousands of pounds to the government. So I will have NHS coverage, but I pay for it outright. And should I work, I still pay 100% national insurance taxes. I'm not saying I shouldn't. Like, I'm fine with paying taxes.
But you paying it twice.
But I'm paying it twice.
So if anyone who isn't in the UK, just to try and give this a little bit of context, I love an analogy and an example. If you've been following any sort of UK news and you've seen the proposals to get UK, like for people in the UK to have to pay for GP appointments, for doctor's appointments, and to visit our emergency rooms, you'll see that the counter argument is, well, we already pay that. If you have a PAYE job, so if you pay as you earn, that's what our tax system is called, you automatically pay national insurance, which is supposed to pay for the NHS, pay for your doctor's appointments, pay for your emergency room visits and your ambulance call-outs and whatnot. So just so you've got like I don't know if that's helpful, if that's a bit more tangible. So Gemma will be paying, or we will be paying, that fee to for NHS, for national insurance, and then should she work, she will have to pay those taxes again.
And so I will pay the equivalent amount of taxes, what the US or Canada would call income tax. I will pay the equivalent amount of that as any British person, as any person in the UK. My taxes will look exactly like anyone else in the country. I will have zero access to any of the benefits that those provide, and will need to pay additionally, non-optional, my NHS fees. I'm not necessarily arguing about that. Like, I get that. I think that's valid in some ways in terms of like making sure people have health coverage. I'm just saying, like, if I have to pay my own way and I don't get access to anything, and Liz is fine signing some paperwork, why can't we live in 2 different homes if we want to? Like, what business of it is the government? Like, that's what frustrates me. If I'm costing $0 to be there, and in fact, like, to give a reference, from now until we are done filing immigration paperwork and I can just live there like anyone else, this isn't citizenship. That's another fee. We will have paid £12,000 to the British government. This is costing us roughly £2,000 a year for the next 6 years, but it is front-ended to be heavier, like more now.
Mm-hmm.
So about £12,000, and I have zero access to anything the British government offers. If I'm paying that, and Liz is fine to sponsor me, and we meet those qualifications, I don't know what business it is of the government's whether we choose to live in one home or 2. I don't get it. So it's things like that that's frustrating, because it also means that different types of partnerships can't exist. It means that the one option you have is cohabitate in a romantic, what they assume to be sexual relationship, and that's that. Also important to note that because we're a queer couple, if I choose to have children myself, i.e. biological children that I carry, they will not have access to British citizenship. That's something that we just have to accept. I say have to accept. Like, yes, we can argue with that, but that's just the case. Because I don't have British parents. and I am I'm on a settlement class. Like this is also the strictest visa class, right? This is why I'm going to say this. I'm going to go into a little bit more details what we had to provide, but our application was 521 pages of information. And that's not exaggeration. That's an exact number. 521 pages of information that they collected from us. But because now, if I had a baby and we were in an opposite sex relationship. Also, to be clear, I don't love this same sex, opposite sex, like vernacular
Terminology, yeah.
but it's what's used, right? So I'm using it because that's how it's determined. And I'll talk about trans stuff in a minute, because that's complicated too. If Liz was male and had sperm and impregnated me, my child could be British. If our sperm donor is British, still not good enough. If I have a baby in the UK, they're not British. Doesn't matter if the sperm donor's British, doesn't matter that my partner's British, doesn't matter that she adopts them, they're not British. And there's ways around that where you can, like, eventually, because we're lucky that Liz has 2 British citizen parents, that we can use some ancestry through adoption to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I will always be that child's biological mother. And in the UK, your biological mother matters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why I am currently going through psychological and logistical hell to get all of my mother's birth records in Canada, because I need them to foster in the UK. Foster children.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's, a lot.
Which is just, I mean, a complete different subject altogether. But, like, why mother? Like, everything else is always so centered around patriarchy. Like, why?
But it's because of the idea that the only, like, maternal lines are a thing, because paternal lines could be whatever, right? Like, it could be, like, if you come out of a woman, and, like, not to be too essentialist here, like, I just want to preface this all by saying, like, this is how the government sees it all. This is not how I understand parenting, birthing, child rearing, family making, any of it. But the idea is, if you come out of a woman, you are undeniably hers.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, yeah.
So, anyway. So we have to prove our genuine and subsisting relationship. For us, that included tons of pictures together. It included plane tickets. It included WhatsApp chats with Liz's family. It included support letters from friends, including some folks you know. It included a support letter from Jackie, whom some of you know. It included all of those things. And then we also had to prove that we intend to actually get married, which included receipts for... Yeah, which included receipts for invitations, bookings, all of that. Now, here's the thing. They don't guarantee when you're actually going to be able to get there. So you have to book all of this and prove that you've booked it without actually having any knowledge that you'll get your visa and get there in time for this booking. But if you don't have your bookings, you don't actually intend to get married, so they're not going to give you a visa. So it's this lovely catch-22 that you end up in.
You were literally on a plinth, hundreds of feet in the air, trying to jump through hoops, and the hoops are also on fire, because how are you supposed to prove that you're getting married when you don't know when you're going to be in the country? But they won't let you in the country until you prove you're getting married.
So that's like how that works. Now, if you are, if you're already married, then you don't have to prove intent to marry, but you have to supply your marriage certificate and all of those things. Also, similar to before with the housing inspection stuff, you have to get everything translated into either English or Welsh. And you have to use one of the translators that Home Office has picked. And, like, I don't want to say too much, but let me tell you, I would love to see how many parliamentarian friends are on the official lists of either of those things. Just saying. Anyway. Don't get me wrong. I understand why you need to translate your documents and stuff. I'm just saying, like, I have no doubt that some shady shit happens to become one of the official translators sanctioned by Home Office.
But we love Home Office.
We do. Home Office is beautiful, and I hope that they are processing my application right now. But so that's that. Um, and I also just wanted to talk about how lucky we are. So I do not need an English competency test because I come from a country and have a master's degree in English, like in a program that's
Taken in an
delivered in
English language, yeah.
Yeah, in English language. Although my bachelor's is actually in English, but my master's is not. My master's is in Canadian studies, which, 10 years ago, if you told Jem she was moving to the UK, she might not have got a master's degree in Canadian studies. Live and learn. um, But so because of that, I don't need to prove my English competency. And I also come from a country where I don't need to take a TB test. But those are two other things that are required for a lot of people in a lot of other countries. I want to tell you why we're so lucky. I live within 2 hours in one direction, 3 hours in the other, each way, I mean, of two visa centers for the UK. So I could drive to one and do that. I don't need an English test. I don't need a TB test. Our documents are largely in English. Great. There are whole countries where there are no UK visa centers. Even when you look at the US, there's like 6 or maybe 8, and it's possible in some places in the US, mainland US, not talking about Hawaii, not talking about Alaska, mainland USA, where you have to drive, I'm not joking, 35 hours to get to a UK visa center. I'm very lucky. I only had to do 2. And I'll explain why that's important in a minute. We also don't have to, if I needed an English test or if I needed a TB test, there are testing centers. Great. If you live in Costa Rica, for instance, or if you live in many, many countries in Africa or Central America, South America, there are no testing centers for either English or TB that the UK government recognizes. In fact, you can go onto the list on the UK website and it says go to another country. It literally says go to another country for your test.
Wild.
So if you're in Costa Rica, you have to fly to the US to do your English test. And if you can coordinate it, maybe you get to do your TB test at the same time. And then you fly home and wait for your results. And then when you have to attend your in-person appointment, which is what I did a week ago, you fly back to the US to attend your in-person appointment. And then you fly back to Costa Rica.
It's literally just, oh God, like white privilege for lots of the countries involved, yeah.
And so I think that it's just wild to me, these places where you literally have to leave the country. Now, the other exciting part of this, I don't have a passport anymore. I do, but the visa center just holds on to it. Actually, it's in New York. It gets to hang out in New York for a while. Not the UK, not Canada. It's in New York. Because they stick a sticker in your passport that says that's your entry vignette for your visa. So when you do this thing where you fly there and fly back, they take your passport from you, and then you have to get it back. So you have to apply for a temporary passport from the country that you're in to go pick up your real one with your UK passport in it, with your UK visa in it. You have to travel to the US 3 times to get your UK visa, and then you can go to the UK. What is the system? So I just wanted to acknowledge how lucky we are. There's so many things about our situation that has made this so easy. We also have had, I was recently saying to someone that this has been the toughest financial 2 years of my life because of all of this and because of the visits and stuff. But we're also lucky that we've had 4 visits in 2 years, right? So Liz is coming here at the end of this week. She was here in September. I was there for 6 months. I was there in 2021 for 3 weeks. So it's easy for us to show that we have a subsisting relationship because we're visiting each other and we can. And it's easy for us to do that. I say it's easy. It's $1,000 round
Yeah,
trip
it's still
every
money,
time.
but we've been very lucky to have been able to do that and make that work, and
because there's
provide lots of photos for it.
Exactly. But that's part of it, right? So let me tell you about why this is so challenging for same-sex couples. If you live in a country like India or China, you need a visit visa to visit the UK or Canada or the US. So to go see your partner, you need to qualify for a visit visa. Let me tell you, these are very hard to get, and people get turned down more often than not because you need to show all sorts of ample proof of going home that is very based in class and money and all sorts of things. And you can't get that visit visa to go visit your partner. Okay, so maybe your partner in Canada or the UK or the US or other parts of Europe can come visit you. But there's no same-sex marriage there. So how are you going to marry your partner? Because they can't get to the UK to marry you, and you can't marry them there. So you figure out a third country, one of 30 that has same-sex marriage to get married. Or you could potentially do the fiancé visa that we're doing. But can you? Like, can you prove that? Can you actually? Because we also have had to have met in person and all of that stuff. Like, this isn't just like you can't prove a subsisting relationship unless you've met, like for like in person, for sure. Which is like, I don't want to say that's not valid because part of it is about like sham marriages and stuff. I get that. But if you're queer in an international relationship, how do you see each other?
Yeah.
Let alone, how do you see each other enough to qualify for immigration, if immigration's even an option? So a lot of feelings there. And so anyway, I also was like, for me, it felt a lot like being processed like a criminal. I know that other people don't feel this way. Cool. For me, it was. I went to this UK visa center, and the first thing was getting metal detectored and swabbed by security guards. And you're not allowed to touch your phone. You're not allowed to do anything. You go into these little rooms that are all white and very like jail cell like, to be honest. And you sit there for processing. And it's a lot of verify your identity, verify your identity. They look at your documents, verify your identity. They take eye scans, they take pictures, they take fingerprints.
I was going to
all of
say,
this
well,
stuff.
how many instances can you name where you have fingerprints taken? Like, I can see why you might have felt criminal. Like, there's not many times in your life where you have to do that.
And to be clear, the staff were like pretty nice. Like, it wasn't like they were, although some of them were more brusque than others for sure, but like the staff was nice, whatever. But it's literally like, there's literally signs on the wall in one spot that says, do not touch your phone. We will confiscate your cellular device. Because you're not allowed. That's why everyone, like when you see the picture of me outside with the sign, that's a sign before you go in. Liz got one text message while I was in the center because there's one spot between processing point A and processing point B where you're allowed to send text messages. If they catch you taking photos or videos, they will take your phone and destroy it. And I'm not exaggerating because those are the signs on the wall, but I can't prove that because I couldn't
take a picture of it.
Yeah. And like, I get the security stuff because we want that staff to be safe, et cetera, but this is also like a third party company. The other thing I need to tell you is that the UK and many countries have outsourced all of this stuff to a third party company. So the person who actually evaluates my application is a government worker, home office in Sheffield, which is where my types of visa are processed, in Sheffield. Great.
Big up Sheffield, we love you.
Yeah. But
especially if you work for Home Office.
Yeah. But the actual like process in terms of have fun, good luck, Amanda. Thanks for being here.
Good luck.
We like, it's a third party company. So like, these people who are doing all this work are like hired by a corporation who bid really well to do this work, which is also wild to me. But anyway, And the processing went fine. It all went fine. I paid the equivalent of about 2,100 American dollars because the company's American. So even though I'm Canadian and Liz is British and the fees are set in pounds, as a Canadian, I have to pay in American dollars. So I paid $2,100 and I got a paper receipt this big that I took pictures of because I was really afraid. Like, they're those like really like flimsy um like receipts from like a store where the ink all fades off and you have to like take pictures before it's gone, or scan it or whatever. That was the type of receipt for my $2,100 American. Um anyway, also this like somewhat sketchy thing happened, which I feel like I just keep telling myself it's fine because everyone has to do this. I'm getting, instead of going to pick up my passport, because I'm in Canada, I can have it UPS'd to me, like couriered to me. So I pay extra for that, $50 extra to get my passport instead of having to go back to Toronto. Excellent. When they do that, it's in a package that requires a signature. They have you sign it already. Like, I've already printed my own label and they've already prepared that
That's
package.
so
And I
wild
had
to
to
me.
pre-sign for my passport, which makes me terrified because I'm terrified that the minute the package leaves, it already has my signature on it. How do I sign for my how I really need that passport to actually come back to me and not get lost or stolen. Because I also don't find out if I'm successful or if I get this visa until my passport arrives at my home and I open my passport, and on some random page inside, there will either be a sticker or not.
Not even
If
a
there is no
standardized page, is it? Just a
no,
random
no,
page.
because
It's
it
like for
freaks people out because they were like, they put it on the last page. It's a random page. They open it up to an empty page in your passport randomly and like stick it in. So one day I will get, and I don't get an email. You can stalk the tracking number because I have a tracking number for UPS. So you can stalk it to see when it goes live, to see if it's like on its way to you. Um, which is part of the reason I paid extra money for different things because they don't actually, I'm not ever going to get an email. I'm not ever going to get any of that. One day my passport will arrive and I will flip through it. And if there's no sticker, I don't have a visa and they've refused it. If there's a sticker, I have a visa.
which is so wild as well, right? Like that makes it sound like you're collecting football cards or something. Like
It's the worst subscription package I've ever been part of.
oh.
So yeah, so that's like that's part of it. Um and I just like it's just wild to me. So we sent 521 pages, which includes 12 months of Liz's bank statements. It includes pictures, it includes letters, it includes decrees, it includes certified documents, scans of both of our passports, scans of both of our birth certificates, um, all of this stuff. And it's all given to a third party company, not the government, which also kind of freaks me out. Like, obviously, like, when I say it freaks me out, I just mean that, like, I don't have any belief that this company is actually doing anything bad with it. That's not what I'm saying. And this is a process that everyone's going through. So I get it from and like visitor visa, all of it. I get it. But just from like an ideological perspective, I've just given a company that has bid for a government contract to do this
Your entire life.
my entire life. My entire life story, my passport, copies of all my ID, my fingerprints, my retina scans. Like, it's a little terrifying.
I do feel
And
bad for whoever has to go through the bank statements though. Just because ADHD brain and I need to gamify everything. I do really stupid things like 5 pence will automatically get put from my current account into my savings account every time Paramore sends a tweet. So they've got to scroll through a lot of silly things in my bank statement. So
it's
I'm
fine.
sorry, officer.
And And like Liz's work contract, like there's just a lot, like tenancy contract, like like this third party has a lot of our details. Um, but that also, so here's why I'm saying some of this stuff too, though, is that you have to have a level of vulnerability and openness that can be terrifying if you're queer, because you're going to a local center. So if you're going to, and I keep saying India, but it's because India is somewhat notorious for some of its anti-queer um, sentimentalities, but they are by no means alone. There's lots of places where it's dangerous, but it means if you're applying from another country as a same-sex partner, like I'm lucky, I went to this place in Toronto, and there's a good chance that some of the people who processed me were queer. Instead, I'm giving this third party, like if they're not queer safe, I'm giving this business, I'm giving these individuals this like information that proves that I'm gay and that I have sex with a person of the same sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, yeah, makes you completely open and vulnerable, and like, you know, you might know the homophobic school bully, or notice the homophobic school bully is the person that is taking your paperwork, or just because you're not allowed your phone there, you know, someone sees your paperwork, knows you, snaps a picture,
Part of
whatever.
Because the first part is done, the verbal processing is all done in a group room. Your biometrics are done in a private room, but I think that's more because of the pictures and stuff like that. So biometrics are eye scans, like retina scans, fingerprints, and photos with your passport. So that all happens. To be fair, also kind of creepy. You're alone in a room, totally closed off, no windows, with a guy. So just, saying that
Yeah.
in a very powered in discrepancy kind of situation, right? But the processing verbally, where I had to state what I was going for, state your name, state my name. There were 25 people in that room who heard me say it all.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so there we go. You're very, very vulnerable then. And, you know, and well, Canada's a huge country, but that's not to say you're not going to know someone that's in the room with you, for example. Like,
Especially because, like, at different times of the year, there's different visas that are much more popular, right? Like, so during the summer, lots of people might be looking for visitor visas. Lots of people in the summer might be looking for student
student
visas for the
visas,
fall,
yeah.
things like that. Like, it's and because the UK requires visitor visas from lots of countries, and it's based on your passport, not your residency. I was one of only a couple Canadian nationals in that room, meaning people with Canadian passports. Because you can have permanent residency in Canada, but if you're from China, let's say, and I'm using this as an example because I watched it happen in that room, I can tell you exactly the name, birth date, where someone is from, where she's from in China, and where she's going to the UK on March 10th, because I could hear it all. Because she's Chinese, her family's Canadian, her husband's Canadian, her two kids are Canadian. I could give you their names and ages as well. Everyone's going to the UK for March break for a visit. She needs a visitor visa because even though she's a permanent resident in Canada, she has her Chinese
She's
passport.
Chinese. Yeah, Chinese passport, yeah.
So she needs a visitor visa.
What?
So I was one of the few Canadian nationals that was there. There was myself. There was someone who was there doing a youth mobility visa, which is 2 years abroad. And there was one person doing skilled worker whose a new job starts on April 13th, by the way, because you can hear literally everything. Um, everyone in that room knows when our wedding date is. um, Almost everyone else was nationals from other countries, where the nature of the immigrant community in Toronto is that often people like hang out with folks from other countries because of the diaspora, et cetera, et cetera. So like it's not the safest situation I can think of. I'm really lucky because I wasn't too worried. But how do I not know that like someone there is going to take issue with the fact, like someone not staff, but even like just in that room, that some like 80-year-old guy isn't going to be pissed off that there's a dyke who's getting married. Mm. And it was fine for me. In the end, it was fine. It could have not been. So yeah, so that's some of, and like we know that this is the experience in all of the visa processing centers, that this is what this looks like. It's not safe for queer people, not inherently anyway. Lots of people get through with no problems for sure, but the danger's there. And with trans folks, it's even harder because the UK requires you to process your sex at birth. And so because of some of the UK stipulations around that, there's I've connected with someone else actually who's moving to the UK, and they're a trans couple. Both of them are trans. And she's struggled a little bit. I'm not going to say countries or anything like that because I just want to keep everyone's safety, but she's struggled a little bit because her sex at birth was male. And so she's had to submit all of this extra stuff explaining why, and they're already married, explaining why this male is in a wedding dress in their wedding pictures.
That's so sad.
And things like that. So like, it's tough. It's tough, and it's not necessarily safe for people. And you have to be really vulnerable. And I understand that there's like security risks. Like I get that there's like legitimate security risks, right? We don't want terrorists or treasonous folks. Like I'm not invalidating that. I'm just saying that like the security is inhumane. And my greatest joy has been connecting with other queer folks in visa forums because we can share some of like how scary it is, basically. And to me, that like knowing that we're always going to be judged differently, knowing that our criteria will always be different than het cis couples in this class is just challenging. Yeah. And so I just wanted to segue a little bit into like a selective history of some same-sex partner immigration because it's directly related. And I want to talk about the UK, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about Canada, the US, and Europe. And say that originally partner class immigration was just impossible for queer couples because relationships weren't verified by the government. Like they didn't see them as real. So
how can you have partner class immigration if there's no partner class, you're not partners?
Yes, exactly. And yeah, like Tom, I agree completely about there needs to be a way to like we don't all need to be treated like terrorists just because someone has changed in their lifetime. And there's ways, I believe that there's ways to do it around accepting self-ID laws and things like that, but it's just really dehumanizing.
But even
and unsafe.
Even from like a security viewpoint, even if they didn't want to budge on those sorts of things, just making it a more comfortable environment, like allowing you to have a chaperone, like, maybe not locking you in a room with no windows, like those sorts of pieces as well, right? Like, it makes you mad.
And so same-sex, like partner class immigration has been available in a number of countries, like even in the late 90s, but it was very, very selective because there was no way for it to work for anyone in an international relationship. The very few situations where these things worked up until the mid 2000s or even later in some places, we're talking like 10 years ago in parts of the UK, 10 years ago in the US, and even now sometimes a little dicey, and lots of places not at all. The only way it worked is if you were already legally in the country on another visa. So for instance, if I went to the UK on a student visa and Liz and I met that way, and then I wanted to stay, we could convert, because like eventually you have to leave after that kind of visa. And if we didn't want that to happen, we could kind of move into this process. And so that has been available limitedly since the late 90s in different places. But I will say in the UK in particular, it was like almost inhumane because the home minister himself in 1999 admitted that they intentionally made the restrictions twice as strict for same-sex couples.
That's vile.
Because for unmarried partners, so unmarried partners is a class for like same-sex, opposite sex, whatever kind of partners. If you can prove that you've cohabitated as partners for 2 years, it's a relationship akin to marriage. You need to have shared a bank account for at least 2 years and been on different things. You can navigate that way. When the UK first introduced that was, so they had that case for het couples. When they first introduced that for same sex, it was 4 years, which means you couldn't go to the UK for a 3-year degree and have that available to you at the end of it, even if you lived with your partner the full 3 years. And they directly said, I have quotes, and I can put them in our show notes. It was twice as strict, 4 years. They made it 4 years, and they acknowledged that it was twice as strict. And it's things like that where you can see the homophobia like evident in the system. It wasn't reduced until the early 2000s to be somewhat equal. And in 2005, they shifted to similar requirements. Now, keep in mind, at this case, this is all still just people who are already legally in the country and can demonstrate that.
Mm-mm.
It has only been in the last 10 years since the UK introduced proper same-sex marriage rights that Liz and I could do this, because otherwise I would need to have a legal way to reside in the UK for long enough that we could then go through this rigmarole. So we'd still have to prove everything I've already told you.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't do it this way.
Yeah.
So it's only been in the last 10-ish years that this has really been properly possible to people in the way that we're doing it, in a way that doesn't require us to have ever legally lived in the same country. In Canada, it was a bit earlier. And Canada also has a fun class called conjugal partners, which means you have to prove that you've been in a romantic relationship for a year of a like sexual nature, basically. Like, and I just joke, like I laugh. Like, I mean, it's still problematic because lots of people don't have sex and don't have like family class shouldn't just mean sex, but here we are. But we're the queer ones are the ones that are always trying to sexualize everything, of course. Right?
We're the deviants,
right? Yeah, sarcasm. And then in 2005, similar to the UK, was when, Tom, that's the question, right? How the heck do you prove that? And here's the thing. In all of these cases, it all comes down to one caseworker. The caseworker that opens your file says yes or no.
That was a lovely mime that Gemma just did. I can see that because I've got her on a bigger screen.
In Canada, the US, and less in the US, but in Canada and the UK, once your application is being evaluated, it happens in one sitting. So one day, in a couple weeks, a couple months from now, someone is going to open our application and sit with it for somewhere between 20 minutes and 90 minutes. And in that evaluation period, make a judgment call on whether we are valid. And there's no checklist, right? It's up to the discrepancy to the dissertation of that caseworker.
Of whoever, yeah.
And so you just hope. There is an appeals process. In the UK, the appeals process lasts between 1 year and 4 years. And most people are suggested, if they are refused, to simply pay all of the fees again and apply again, because that's quicker and you're more likely to get a yes than going through the appeals process. And you don't get refunded if you don't get anything refunded if you are refused, if you're denied.
Like it's fully just built to be a deterrent.
Yes. And in Canada has a fun trick, which is that if you're a hetero couple, now they're in the process of changing this, but in one province it's not changed yet because here it's provincial. There's a fun trick in Canada fun trick for us same-sex couples. If you're a straight couple, if you're a man and a woman, I don't want to say straight that way. I mean, like, you're a het presenting couple, one man, one woman. And you got married in Honolulu, you got married in Aruba, you got married in the UK, you got married in Toronto. Doesn't matter. Is that a legal marriage? Great. You can sponsor your spouse to come to Canada. If you're a same-sex couple, you have to get remarried in Canada.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, they've changed it in most provinces, including mine, that isn't the case. There's still one, though, where it is the case, and you still have to get married in that province. Now, here's the great double jeopardy of that. In other countries, if they show that you've got married twice, you're not eligible for immigration anymore because they believe at least one of them's a fraud, which includes the UK. Isn't that lovely?
You gotta laugh or you cry.
So if you're a same-sex couple, your foreign marriage, even if it's somewhere where it's totally legal, even if it's the US, nope. Same-sex marriages, other places aren't valid. You have to get married in Canada. Great. Now, in the US, they do this fun thing. Now, their process takes about 3 years, about 36 months. And there's still large discrepancies because federally, immigration is federal, but different states have different rules around same-sex marriage. And they do this fun thing where if you're in a state where you're struggling to like register your same-sex marriage as part of your immigration, they just don't give you a green card. You can stay there, but it's kind of illegal and you certainly can't work.
Oh.
And you can be stuck in that limbo for 8 years while the state and the federal government argues about whether your marriage is valid or not. But only for same-sex couples. And similarly, it wasn't until 2013. Yeah, but don't worry, you can buy a gun.
Yeah,
exactly.
At Walmart. Yeah, like, what the fuck?
And it wasn't until 2013 when there was a ruling that actually stopped the deportation of these same-sex partners who were living in... Because what they would do is you would be there, but they would block you from filing the rest of your paperwork, and then they would deport you because you didn't have the green card that you were waiting years for.
Because you didn't file the paperwork, they wouldn't let you file.
Yes, because they wouldn't accept your paperwork. And this was the catch-22 that couples were in until 2014 in the US, where if you were in a nice liberal state like California, you were fine. And if you were in Florida, they deported your ass even though you were there legally and waiting for the government to do their part. And like, there's actual real stories about this. Like, it's just wild, right? So there's like all of these things. And I will say that like there's different places in Europe that have been like much friendlier to this. Like Denmark was the first country to have same-sex partner class immigration, and it was all the way back in 1989. Now, you had to be 24. You couldn't, like, that was the age minimum. And there were like financial stipulations that were really strict and all of that, but there has been other stuff. The Netherlands was one of the first countries to allow same-sex marriage and to actually have proper family class immigration. But the barriers that I spoke about before continue to exist, right? And so much of this is based on what I call the visit visa paradox, the cohabitation paradox, and the poverty paradox. And I've talked about each of those, right? How do you get a visit visa from a country where it's hard to get visit visas from? And your partner can visit you there. Maybe, like, usually it's easier to go in the other direction, but you can't get married there. So what are you going to do? And you maybe even can't even safely be out there. You maybe can't take a picture together and look like a gay couple because that's dangerous. But in the country you want to live in where it's safer to be gay, they require that.
You need evidence. Yeah, you need those photographs. What are you supposed to do? Like, literally.
You don't. Like, the sad thing is that I've been in long-distance relationship groups across LiveJournal, Facebook, Reddit, etc. for years and years and years, and it breaks apart same-sex couples because there's no viable end in sight. I was in a long distance relationship live journal back in the early 2000s where a US UK couple literally broke up over it because there was no viable way to close the gap. They couldn't afford to go to school in each other's countries. It's hard to get work visas unless you happen to get a company that has them or you're in like, a doctor or something like that.
Yeah, like I was going to say a field, like a field,
No,
emphasis on field, like.
But one that often costs a lot of money,
Yeah,
schooling wise,
absolutely.
requires privilege. The cohabitation paradox is also that in order to safely live together in lots of places, same-sex couples have to pretend to be roommates. If you pretend to be roommates, they're going to think it's a sham when you try to immigrate or when you try to sponsor that person. One of the things that is in our favor is that Liz has a 1-bedroom flat. If we had 2 bedrooms, we would need to explain why we need 2 bedrooms for 2 people, for a couple. It's actually a question on the supporting accommodation stuff.
Because I want to fart in, Money said in chat.
What was this?
Yes. I want to fart in.
Yeah. But honestly, like, right? But that's, Ton, that, like, these are exactly it. Like, why do you want a 2nd bedroom? Because one's our office. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, that's a little close to home. Like, I'll be taking my CPAP at the end of the week.
But, like, if you live in a situation where, like, you want your own bedroom, which is, like, Liz and I have literally talked about that in the past because I enjoy my space, but that was before we'd actually been together and I realized I'm quite happy sharing a lot of space with her. But there's been lots of points in my life where I've wanted more space. I'm an only child. I've lived alone a long time. I like space. No, that is a sign that you're secretly straight and in a sham gay marriage to move to the UK where it is very gay friendly. But that's the jinx, right? Like, people, there's nothing wrong with having your own bedroom. And then the poverty paradox is that you have to be able to have enough money to get enough evidence. And we know that queer folks earn less on average than straight folks. Yep. We know those things to be true. And so those pieces where, especially if you're in like you can just be in these situations for years and years and years with no end in sight because the country you're going to, the person there needs to make enough money while also making enough money to pay for visits because we don't have the option to not have visits because they won't think it's a real relationship. But we have to put the money into visits and into the immigration fees. We don't have a choice. We can't choose to not visit each other. They will decide that's a sham. We also can't not pay the immigration fees. And in this case, we also have to prove that we have a legitimate marriage coming up. And if you just get married and just have, you can't just submit your wedding certificate, like your marriage certificate. People have been refused for only submitting, I can show you refusal letters from Home Office for just submitting a marriage certificate as proof of marriage. You need pictures. And that's why this poor trans woman is in this situation of explaining why she's in a wedding dress. Because she's a woman in a wedding dress, that's why. But anyway, because you need to show the pictures to prove that it was a legitimate wedding and not just a paperwork wedding. So you need to have the money to do that. Like, I can't explain to you how you need to have the money. Like, people have said to me, like, how are you affording a wedding, an 8K wedding, 10K immigration, and moving continents this year? And Liz is spending a month with you. And my response has been, I don't have an option. Don't have a choice. We either spend this money now and do this so we can be together, or we continue to live on 2 continents, paying bills on 2 continents.
Across 5 time zones.
Across 5 time zones.
Ships in the night.
In perpetuity. There's no option. So we're doing it because we have to. Like, and I guess the other option is like we just keep living long distance. But we, like I said, we continue we continue to pay rent in 2 countries and pay bills in 2 countries and do all of this in 2 countries. Like, there's also no option to just, like, combine our cost of living because we can't live together. Like, I can't explain to you how expensive the last 2 years have been. I'm really excited for next year to not be nearly as expensive.
Imagine. We have to, like, have a proper holiday.
Imagine. I'm going to Belgium.
I know. Gemma's going to Belgium.
I've decided. But yeah, and we're lucky. We're lucky because I am within a 2-hour drive of an airport that's a direct flight multiple times a day to London, and Liz is within a 2-hour drive of that. Like, there's so many reasons we're just lucky. We both, the Belgian obsession is real. We speak the same language, you know, like, there's so many things in our favor. But it's tough. It's tough. So Flinksy, yes and no. Once I arrive, I will have a period of time where I'm stuck in the UK when they take my passport again to put a new sticker in it. But generally speaking, I can come and go as I wish. Now, the exception to that is if I want to apply for citizenship, I can't have been out of the country more than 400 days in the previous 6 years. So it'll be fine. I don't anticipate us being out of the country for that often because we're settling. But near the end of the process, they will test how often I've left the UK. But everywhere I go, I'm still on my Canadian passport. So my BRP and my visa is only relevant to the UK. Everywhere we go, Liz will be processed as a Brit and I will be processed as a Canadian until I have British citizenship.
We'll just have lots of UK breaks instead. There's lots of the UK I haven't seen yet, and it's very small, so let's take advantage.
It's easy enough to go to Europe and places like that. It'll just be that we need to process our visit visas differently to different countries, and different rules, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can be in some parts of Europe for only 30 days. In a year, you can do 90. Some of the, like, digital nomad stuff applies to us differently. For the most part, we're lucky because our passports are similar. Like, we're both from the global north, where we're fairly privileged. But think of that couple, that woman that I saw at the visa center who's Chinese, and her Canadian family wants to go to the UK and they don't need visas, and she does. In a different world, we could be in a very different situation.
That's very true, yes. Tom. So Tom's saying, at least when you travel to Europe, you both get to be in the same passport queue. Thanks, Brexit. Yeah. Silver linings and all that, eh?
Yep. So, I mean, for the most part, we're lucky that way. But, like, again, if I was traveling around on a Kenyan passport, let's say, where we could go would be very different because I'll still, everywhere else in the world, still be processed as a Canadian or whatever country you're from. So, yeah, so that's my, like, long, like, I don't want to say rant. Like, I just really need to say that we're so lucky because we have been in a situation where it was a huge financial stretch, but you didn't need to change jobs. And, like, for instance, the financial stuff, like, if you had to change jobs, you would have to be in that job for 6 months at least before we could process anything. Accommodations, we knew that you wanted your own place anyway, regardless of me coming there. So, like, that was easy that way.
Yeah, there's been things that haven't had to change at all, so.
But for some people, it has to change a lot.
Yeah, everything has to change, yeah.
And I'm also really glad that I get to do this. Like, for us, like, it's never felt impossible. It's felt really hard financially, and it's felt really challenging. And, like, I just want to give a huge shout out to Monty, who I am like a broken record moaning about home office changes, because in all of this, like, the home office stuff has shifted, like, because of Brexit. I haven't even mentioned this. Because of Brexit, settlement class visas, the timeline for processing them has tripled. their service standard has tripled. And she has listened to me moan about everything from processing standards to, oh, they're changing this, oh, they're changing that. The new thing that Home Office is doing is when they send you your visa, sometimes it's available that day, like sometimes it's valid that day, and sometimes it's not valid for 2 or 3 months. It depends on what the caseworker has decided.
So wild. I was saying to Jem the other day, when I was 16, I had a job for a very big credit card company. And at 16, I had the power to block or unblock credit cards. Just depending on what I fancied, depending on who I was chatting to on the phone and what they wanted. It's very much 16-year-old Liz working for a credit card fraud company. At the, like, oh yeah, yeah, that one could go in that pile. That one could go in that pile. Yeah, fine, yeah. Like, it's it's dependent on who gets to read your case. It's so wild to me.
And I feel the same, right? Like, because it's really up to that individual caseworker. And yes, there's appeals and service standards and all of that. But one of the things in the forums that we've realized is that there's no standard for this. It doesn't say anywhere the rules around granting when the visa is valid from.
And like,
it is up to the caseworker 100%.
And the other thing is, and it shouldn't be this way, but what do you expect when you apply for a visa and they don't give you a full list of criteria? How, like...
So one of the reasons I have been so, like, why I'm saying thank you to Moni and why I've been so, like, anxious about this is that there's things that you don't know. Like, for instance, in all the forums, it will tell you the checklist on the UK government is incomplete. And if you only send that stuff, they will refuse you. And I can show you refusal letters that say you didn't submit any of this stuff that's not listed on the site. I can show you actual refusal letters because they're posted in the forums. We share all of our info. One of the tricks we figured out, we had to upload 24 documents to this. Like, we had everyone, like, how you upload your documents is kind of up to you and your visa and all sorts of things. There's strict rules around the format, the size, the page size, all of this stuff. Our application, those 521 pages, were broken out across 24 documents. We tried, so it took us 7 hours to upload 24 documents. And every time it didn't work, you have to sign out and sign back in. And it was like this trick. It was just trick to, like, don't upload too much, just keep trying. And this is where, like, Liz came in clutch. Oh, that was a Canadian saying. Where Liz really came
we
in
say
clutch.
That now. It's traveled across the pond.
Because that's the trick. And if you don't upload your documents, you get refused. So you just keep trying and trying and trying.
That was a long night.
And trying and trying. Forever. Like it was wild.
Just kept clicking.
Like, literally 7 hours.
Just kept clicking.
Yep. But we knew that we just had to keep trying because the forums kept saying the website's broken, the website's broken, the website's broken. In the week we had to submit our documents, the website actually broke and stopped letting people sign in at least 4 times.
Yeah. And again,
in perpetuity.
I am of the opinion it is literally just a deterrent, because if it's too difficult to do, then people aren't going to do it. And it was like, everything needs to be in PDF format. So we've got the PDFs. And bearing in mind, we've created the PDFs because it's our evidence. And we've turned it into PDF. And we've uploaded it. And then it's telling us it can't accept that PDF because the PDF has encryption on it. It has a password on it. No, it doesn't. I created that PDF. I didn't put a password on it. And so we spent ages trying to unlock documents that weren't locked to find out that if you just keep clicking the button, it will upload.
That's its generic error message. Its generic error message is This has a...
Flinksy, thank you so much for the pally.
Awesome.
That'll get split across all the creators on Geek Herring TV. So thank you so much. That's much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a long night. And then we did it again 2 days later to keep doing it, to keep working on it. Because there's no option. And here's the thing. If you don't submit your evidence, if you don't get through these, they just refuse your application and keep your money. Like, money never comes back to us. Money never comes back. It doesn't matter how many mistakes they make. You just keep paying fees.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it doesn't matter if the site's down for a week and you can't upload anything. That's the applicant's fault, clearly.
Yes, they will just refuse your visa, and you have, after 6 months, you will go through the waiting period, because you can't, once you've hit the fingerprint biometrics appointment, you can't change anything, you can't upload anything, you can't submit anything. Even if it's the website's fault, you have to wait until they refuse it, and then you pay some more for a new one.
I declined to comment, Tom, as we're being criticised and watched quite intensely currently.
But I will say, like, one of the things, like, so I sat in this office with all these, this is how I know the details of this Chinese woman, is also that she had trouble uploading her permanent residency card, because that was one of the things she needed for her visitor visa. We also had trouble uploading many things, so we understand this. And she needed to submit both sides of her card. So the worker says, straight face, I can scan the front for free, but to scan the back is $60. I swear on my love for Liz, I watched that exchange happen.
Makes
and she
my
was just
eyes
like,
tear up.
She was just like, okay. And because what do? You're going to get refused if you don't submit that. So you're sitting in the office, and this is your last chance. This is your last chance to get your document in. So you pay it because you're desperate. We can scan the front for free, but the back will be $60.
Imagine if she was like, well, do you know what? I managed to scan the back in. Fucking scan the front.
But, like, in what world does it cost in what world is it free to do one side, and when you flip it over, it's cost the worker $60?
The effort of flipping the card over, that's what it is. That's labour cost.
Wild. And, like, to me, I would even feel, like, more okay if they just said, like, it's $60 to scan. Because then it's like, okay, we open up the program, whatever. How is it the discrepancy that scanning the front is free and the back is $60? What's happened in the flipping of that card? Yes, exactly, Tom. The first hit is free. But yeah, like, the money. And the loopholes, and, like, and so the only reason I know so much of this stuff is visa forums across a number of different, like, platforms and stuff. And when I was saying, you know, Monty's listened to it, is I'll be like, you will not believe what has happened now. You will not believe what has happened now. Because it's just wild. And, like, it's a third party. If you want updates on your application, it's a third party call and email center that does it. And it's £3 for an email.
I was just going to say that.
Them.
£2.67 it cost me to email.
I thought it was £2.74, my love.
Oh, maybe. I thought it was 67. Yeah.
But you can't get that wrong. It's very important, those, like, 6 pence or whatever the difference is.
To send an email.
And here's what they can tell you, because we were trying to actually change something on the application because of a new thing that's happened, which is we've put a particular date on our application that I want to travel in June, and that means likely when my visa gets issued, it won't be effective until June. So I'm kind of, like, stuck here even if it's issued in April. So we were trying to like change our information to see like, could we put a travel date as April and hope for the best and then we get it sooner? Maybe. And not have like get my visa, but it's not valid for like 3 months, 2 months, whatever. So we paid to do an email. Of course they can't change that. But people pay this money because you don't get any updates. Again, your passport arrives just, you don't get any emails. So people pay this because eventually when you send your weekly £3 email, eventually, like what it always says is, your application is currently being considered. That's a form email that never changes. In fact, when we tried to change things, the email that came back that said, we can't change anything, but we could give you a status update if you would like. And
in
then
the next sentence, we can give you a status update. The status update is, you're being considered. Thanks.
And that's the generic status update. And eventually they'll stop saying that your application's under consideration. And that means maybe that a decision has been made.
Maybe that a decision has been made. So
you keep paying these £3 emails, or you can call the line at 69 pence a minute for this third-party call center.
That's a nice price, though.
For this third-party call center to get a generic response, because they don't actually have access to anything. The reason why they can't change anything is this third party, it's a security risk for them to have access to the information. So all they can see in the system is whether your application's there or not. That's why they say it's not under consideration anymore, and we believe it's a decision, because it's not in their system anymore. All they can see is whether your code exists in the system or not.
It's a £3 a week tracker.
You pay £3 for that privilege. We have a tracker. Those of us who've been working in this system since the timelines got longer, in about a year ago now. And according to that tracker, that's just the people who the people who self-selected to be part of this. So it's not everyone. It's just a Google sheet. We all put in every time we've paid money for paid inquiries. And this company has made £12,000 off of us in the last 12 months of people trying to get information, because the system has broken so badly after Brexit.
Just that tiny, tiny sample of people too. Not even everyone.
In fact, I'm actually going to look up the number right now because I have access to it. In theory. It's working on it. My internet's slow for some reason. There we go. It's also now a giant spreadsheet, but let me look at the summary. So in the last 12 months, the people of this spreadsheet have paid a combined amount, so that what the caption is, total amount of money that UKVI has received for paid inquiries from the applicants in this spreadsheet, £12,506.29. The average applicant in the spreadsheet has paid £12.88. Nope. That's the statistics on that sheet that I'm looking at right now. And those are just those of us who have self-selected in to be in this tracker to get information. And the reason why we do this is because there's zero information that comes from, so we track everyone else's applications to be like I look at all the other Canadian applicants, I look at all the other fiancé applicants, and we try to extrapolate trends from that. Anyway, but we could pay the £3 for the email. Now that they're rolling out priority service again, which is £600 a pop, you can already see that regular applications are taking longer again now, because they're prioritizing the people who can pay £600. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're scraping together the £600 to pay for priority, because we believe I could miss our wedding if we don't. We're watching the trend. And in the last month, the trend has been bad enough that I might miss the wedding if we don't pay for priority. So we're going to give them an extra £600 that wasn't planned to buy our way to the front of the list, because it's really a lot more expensive for me to miss the wedding that we've already dumped $2K, $3K, $4K on.
Yeah. Panic.
Here we are. The pay to win system.
Yeah.
But
A few of those in life, huh?
yeah. And I just feel for a lot of queer couples whose safety, they just have to be unsafe to do this.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
We are very lucky.
I'm I'm in a place where we can go take pictures at Peterborough Pride and submit them in our applications. And we have pictures with friends and family because we can be out and all of that stuff. Because part of the determining real relationship is also pictures with friends and family, pictures showing that you're not a secret relationship or whatever. There's lots of queer couples that can't do that. But we submitted pictures of us with Ed and Ben and Rick and Gary and Aranis and Capt, and like we've been able to do that. We've been able to submit pictures of you with my friends here, Pride on 2 continents. Like we've been able to do that stuff because we're safe enough to.
Chat logs of you in conversation with my family, and yeah.
Yep. Did you want to talk a little bit about Rainbow Railroad now that I've gone on and on?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about a very, very different kind of migration, and talk a little bit about the charity Rainbow Railroad. So, those of you who know me, you might remember that I did a charity fundraiser stream for Rainbow Railroad for my 30th birthday. Just because I think they're a really worthy cause. So Rainbow Railroad, in their words, as a result of Rainbow Railroad, more LGBTQI+ individuals will be able to access lives free from persecution. So Rainbow Railroad are a charity that help queer folk find safety, help them, leave the countries where they might be arrested or beaten to death, and move them to countries where they can live safely and out of the closet. So Rainbow Railroad are currently operating pretty globally. So I'm just going to list a few of the countries and a tidbit of information from that country. So they operate in Africa, and currently there are 35 countries on the African continent that criminalise lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and intersex individuals. And the issue is with these African countries is that many of these countries border on each other, which means even if you're trying to escape whatever country you're in, you are going through another country where it's criminalised. So it's much, much harder to find safety. They operate in the Caribbean, where 13 countries in the Caribbean still criminalise same-sex intimacy. So, and not that I want to play pit these issues against each other, but that's not same-sex marriage. That's not cohabitating with someone of the same gender. That's not just that's intimacy. And I guess as well, how we've been talking about all evening, that's down to interpretation as well, right? If I was to be in the Caribbean and hug another woman, could someone report me? What would happen then?
The safety is not even just in can we live a life together? It's can I
be seen with you? Can I act correctly?
Can I engage in sexual relationships with someone of the same sex and not be killed for it?
Yeah. Which is just wild. Absolutely wild. Mm-hmm. They operate in Central and South America. They operate in Eastern Europe. And, in Eastern Europe, generally, the human rights of queer folk in Eastern Europe are respected, with the exception of Russia, and sadly, increasingly, Poland and Hungary. And although Russia decriminalised same-sex sexual activity between consenting adults in private in 1993, this has been consistently under threat since. So, still not a great place to be as someone queer. They also operate in the Middle East, where queer people lack human rights protections in most of the states that make up the Middle East and Northern Africa. And sex between men is illegal in 10 of the 18 countries that make up that region. Not only is it illegal, it's punishable by death in 6. And then they also operate in South and Central Asia. So again, these countries offer little protection to queer folk or to LGBTQIA plus communities. 21 out of 49 states outlaw same-sex intimacy, and only 9 states protect against discrimination. So there is some progress in these countries. Progress is steadily being made in Taiwan and Thailand, but most of the region remains firmly entrenched in homophobic and transphobic legislation. So, we've been discussing over the last almost 2 hours how lucky we are. Like, we are incredibly, incredibly lucky. As politics and opinions are swinging right again in many, many places, at least we're mostly safe. Like, we can't be killed by the state.
The bar is low. When we're saying, like, we're safe because we can't be, like, the state, there's not state-sanctioned death penalties for being queer. The bar is low.
It is. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of talk about the other side of immigration, and just to bring that to the attention of people in chat. I've just popped a link in chat so you can find out more about Rainbow Railroad, and I'm just about to pop in their donation link. So if you got money to burn, if you want to contribute to a good cause, there's a link there too.
And so we've talked about in the future doing an episode on Rainbow Railroad with someone who works for Rainbow Railroad. I'm lucky enough that with my fundraising connections, I'm actually pretty good friends with the director of philanthropy for the Toronto office, which is their main office. So Dane is wonderful, Dane Bland, and he's their director of philanthropy. We actually went to university together. And he's a gay man, and they provide safe passage. But a lot of what they have to do is actually argue with the governments of countries like Canada and the UK, because, like, for instance, Canada agreed to take in queer refugees from Afghanistan after the Taliban took back over in 2021. They have only relented to actually follow through on that this month. So the people who have been waiting in a state that they can be killed for being queer, Canada said that they would take them in. And this is through official channels. This isn't just like some kind of like rescue mission. This is like, we agree to take them in as part of our refugee quota, and Rainbow Railroad helps provide all of the supports around settling all of that stuff. It's taken that long for the great government of Canada, which is actually a centrist, at least, if not slightly left-wing government. Like, this is the government that, it's the same party that legalized marijuana and all of that stuff. Like, it's not the Tories for sure. Like, this is a centrist, at least, party. It's taken since August of 2021 for the government to uphold their end of the deal for a quota that already exists through an organization that exists in many, many countries and is home in Canada.
That's so wild, isn't it? Like,
so this one, so they help provide that, but they can only work with governments, right? So like Rainbow Railroad helps people, but they get thousands of appeals every year from people who are unsafe and need to move. They need to go to another country.
Yeah.
And
So
I say all Rainbow Railroad can do is work with those countries. Like they themselves aren't sponsoring people and bringing them. They
mm,
still depend on the governments of these
to pull
countries.
the fingers out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, if you can hear the engine outside.
Go ahead. I think you're okay. Oh, is it still?
Yeah. Um.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I was going to say if you fancy some light bedtime reading, that's not true
Categorically not what it
at
is.
all. But if you find yourself with a spare few minutes, click the links there, have a little read, and see, you know, if there's any way that you can help or support the charity because they're doing very big and good things. And you know, I've thought about myself. What happens if we do get that second bedroom and we prove that we only need one bedroom? Um, you know, maybe we can take someone in the future and those sorts of things. Um, so yeah, it's it's a
It
sad
it
world that we live in, but I hope that we can try and make it a little bit better.
and it felt important to mention them because what we are talking about is like we're talking about family class immigration, but the reality is that we still live in a world where migration is the only viable option for happiness or even life
Safety,
for
yeah,
some people.
yeah.
And you can actually read on the Rainbow Railroad website some of the statements from people who suddenly are in countries where they're not afraid for their lives every day. And it's pretty sobering. Um, and yeah, it just felt, in all we talk about how lucky we are, like Liz said, it just felt so important to mention this organization. Liz has fundraised for Rainbow Railroad on Twitch already. This is an organization that we really just believe in, and they do amazing work. And if you're interested in their stuff, they also do um, like basically webinar style stuff a couple times a year where they update on their work and stuff like that. And you can sign up to their mailing list and attend one of these free of charge just to hear what they're doing. But it's also an opportunity, like not only to hear what they're doing, but they kind of like update on the state of things in the world. So, for instance, a couple Caribbean countries have actually decriminalized same sex intimacy in the last 12 months. And so you get to hear some of the good stories too. So I really suggest like checking them out to hear about what queer life is like in parts of the world that we don't necessarily always hear from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. And Canada in particular takes in a lot of one of the things that's really remarkable about the Toronto drag scene is that there's huge numbers of drag queens from Caribbean nations because of refugee status. So that's one of the areas that Canada does a little better. And Toronto's drag scene is a beautiful drag scene, in part because of all of the immigrants that have come from the Caribbean in order to be safe here, and are part of the drag scene. Yeah, there's one of the things that's as drag becomes more mainstream and as drag queens become more mainstream, we hear a bit more about those stories basically. And Drag Race is part of it, but um yeah, it's one of the reasons why I just really hope at some point in the future I get to take Liz to proper drag stuff in Toronto,
It'll happen.
um, especially since you have your own Caribbean roots. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's about it. One thing I did want to say was just like a huge thank you to Gemma. And by extension, a huge thank you to folks like Moni, because throughout this process, I've been given one role, which was don't get sacked. Make sure you have consistent employment history. Um, and Gemma has really just steered this ship completely. Um, So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, and especially so because like yesterday, if you don't know, was our 2-year anniversary, which is wild. Can you believe it's been 2 years already? So yeah, a big thanks to Gemma. Big thanks to anyone who has listened to Gemma's cries, um, because
Can I?
my job was incredibly easy in comparison.
Um, I don't know if that's true. Like you've had to like hold down the ship in the UK too, right? Like your life has been on pause just as much as mine has in just different ways, right? So like you're absolutely pulling your weight on this. We've just had different roles in it.
I'm gonna
I
cry.
also want to give a shout out to Amanda, who's been uh, I've been filling her inbox, her DMs with stuff about immigration for a while too. And I asked her way back when I was still in the UK with you if she would be my immigration buddy as well. And so she's heard lots of thoughts about like, what if we get married in Scotland? What if we do this? What if we do that? How do we feel about this? And me just like trying to sort it out because it's so challenging to navigate the paperwork of getting married, of immigrating, of moving, of and they're like all related, but they're separate. And so like I think it's really fitting that we're having this chat on Geek Caring because Geek Caring have been a huge part of our support system for this.
Absolutely.
Um yeah, but we've put in a lot of work and you know, UK willing, they're going to approve me for this visa. I believe we have a really strong package that has adhered to the rules. Um and we just hope and we'll be getting married and all of that, and I'm so excited about it. I keep trying not to put the cart before the horse too much in terms of like, oh yeah, we're going to get the visa. I do believe it, but I try not to be like too certain.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be
Um
fine. Like I say, like you've put so much hard work in. I can't imagine it not being successful. Like the 521 pages was not hyperbole, people.
yeah. But I think like because so much of it is up to the discretion of home office and all of that, like I do believe we're okay, but there's always until that visa is in hand and it's in my I have my passport with the visa in it. There's going to be a little inkling where I'm just like I just so yeah, but I'm excited. And really also just want to say like I'm really excited to not be obsessed with immigration anymore. I've kind of mourned a little bit that I feel like I've lost myself a little bit to the process, and I used to be a person with hobbies and things that weren't just like spitting out UK home office factoids all day long. um, and I'm working on that, but I'm really looking forward to being Gemma again and not just Gemma going through immigration because this shit eats at you. Like if you can see, like if y'all think I'm hyper focused on this stuff, you should see some of the people on the forums who are literally like posting like obsessively, right? Like one person today posted 6 times. One of the question was, do we have to get married in the county that my UK partner was born in? And we were just like,
No.
no, but also I can home office is so like
Yeah.
such a stickler that I
Like I
can
get
also
it, but
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
to be fair, I've responded like that, but I only know that because we've been doing research ourselves. And maybe
Mhm.
Flinksy. So Flinksy says maybe you should start a UK immigration consulting firm. I might be trying to push Gemma in a similar sort of direction when she can work over here. Wink,
You
wink.
could just say it. You could
Nudge,
just say
nudge.
it. I'm
Say
okay with
what?
that.
Say what?
What you're nudging about? Because I
No,
think I know what you're talking about.
it's not for me to say.
You sure? Yeah, I mean, I don't care. You can say what.
It's
Anyway.
not for me to say.
Um. Okay. But that's where we're
Just
at.
saying she's got a lot of knowledge around weddings and immigration and other things. And thank you, Flinksy.
I was actually going to make a post in the Geek Herring Discord about, like, I think I've maybe found what I want to do when I go to the UK. So, and it's not quite a consultant, but yeah,
Close.
so maybe I'll post in the Discord and we'll talk about it. But I think I kind of figured something out that I really want to do. I've been feeling a little rudderless for a while, just wondering like where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do when I'm not in this limbo, right? Because I've been in limbo between immigration, COVID, all of this stuff for a number of years, and I'm just looking to figure some stuff out and also maybe have a job that I can put on. I mean, erotica writing is valid, and I'm not shitting on that. It's hard to become a foster mom when you're an erotica writer. So I also need a job that like I can put on foster applications that doesn't make people worry about me. So
She
just trying
needs
to figure out where I'm
a
going to go.
trusty chauffeur. A gay with a driver's license.
See, I love the idea of fetish weddings, but and I'm down for that. But also, I think that I mean we've kind of touched on it, so I'm just gonna say it. Like I think that I'm gonna move forward with
This is an
becoming a
exclusive!
celebrant. Move forward with becoming a celebrant in the UK and actually perform weddings in the UK, but also include with it some specializing in queer weddings and specializing because the rules are different, and we'll talk about that on the wedding episode. But also for couples for immigration purposes to help them sort out their paperwork and stuff like that.
And
So
maybe she needs someone to drive her around and live stream it as an additional paid service.
but I love marrying people here in Canada, and thinking about where I go from here. It's in the same way, you know, something I can do as much or as little as I want. I still have my own control over my schedule and what I'm doing. It's both practical and a little bit spiritual, and
It ticks all
especially
your
with queer
boxes, eh?
weddings. Yeah. So
And it's
yeah.
something that
So I
we
think
can
that.
do. I say we, like I'm just wiggling my way in there. But as like, you know, two chronically ill women, like Gem's touched on there, you can set your own schedule, set your own rates. You know, she is an incredible writer, an incredible public speaker. Like, she just oozes love. Like, what better role could there be? It means we get to travel around the UK and see lots of things and meet lots of people, as Molly says. You know, most of the weddings are in the summer, so we get an easy breezy rest of the year, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for her. I'm excited to be her right hand woman. And yeah.
Yeah, so I've done some just trying to figure out like where I go. And like for a while I was looking at like maybe I would do fundraising. Like I knew that when I got to the UK I would need to diversify my career because my current career is going to be a challenge for fostering kids and potentially adopting kids, which is something we're looking at. And so I need another plan, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm not begrudging that in any way. And I think I found a plan that sounds good, and I've looked into getting my certification and stuff like that. So I'm feeling good about that. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree that the wedding industry can be a bit brutal for like scheduling and stuff, which is part of my hope around um being able to sort of like pick and choose a little bit and have like a package that people can opt into. And then my off season would be, you know, consult, like people are planning right now, people are planning their summer weddings and stuff like that. So the off season would be consulting with folks and getting ready, and then it would actually be out and about
Oot and a boot.
for oot and a boot. And also like I just think that, you know, in a weird way, I think lots of people are going to be like, oh, a fancy Canadian accent. Not that I think it's fancy, but like the people in the UK always comment on my accent, and like maybe that's a fun sell. I get to officiate your wedding in Canadian. Yeah. What? Look at you laughing at me.
No, I was trying to make a pun about like moose knuckles and I couldn't make it happen.
No, this is yeah.
Okay, bye. See ya.
But yeah, so I'm excited to like do that and get to be like